Good evening, everyone. Everyone, 5 minutes each, we can get going. We're 5 past, so I don't want to keep everyone waiting. My name is Kenny Woodland. I'm just doing a couple introductory remarks. I'm the District D, the West End Town Councilor. Just as a quick way of background for folks that weren't at the last meeting, tonight we're here to discuss a project that's proposed on Pleasant Street between Bridge and Rosedale. And I guess the long story short, as a way of background, this area was first rezoned in 2007, right before the housing collapse. And the goal of that rezoning was to increase the commercial and residential mixed use of this area to provide better paths towards the river and to get better open space and to really make this a vibrant part of town. The housing market collapses and things change a little. And so in 2011, 12, 13, all we really saw in this area was more dense, very dense residential units. So like your Repton or your, the other spots in the river would be good examples of those. So in 2013, we began an initiative to rezone this area so that it better fit what we originally envisioned the Pleasant Street Corridor District realizing. So we reduced the density, so it can't be as dense. We lowered the height of buildings. We made it so that you had to increase your open space and your access to the river, and we required commercial. There's a whole other reason for commercial in a diversified tax base, but I won't get into it. So the long story short is that the proposal we're seeing tonight meets the criteria of this new envisioned Pleasant Street Corridor District in the same way that the building across the street has. So it's kind of interesting to note that I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of folks were in this room talking about the Watertown Ma project, which was bringing in 3 buildings that were all 5 or 6 stories tall and was something like 450 units. So we've gone from that to where we are today. So it's nice to realize the vision. I think this is 56 units. So it's just nice to realize where we were and how we got here. And so since last meeting, I know a lot of folks have met individually with the developers, mostly with the architect, to say, because this borders residential backyards, say, hey, what's my backyard going to look like? What's going to happen here? What am I going to be seeing when I look out my back window? And to kind of get a better idea of what the architecture and the planting is going to be. At the same time, there have been some other recommendations, some other questions that have been answered. So we're going to start the meeting with a couple of those pieces, and then after that, get into the purpose of this part of the meeting, which is the traffic implications, and go through that piece. So I'll kick it over now, and I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks for your assistance in helping us reach out to the neighborhood. I'm Bill York. I am the attorney working for the development company. Steve Collins is here this evening, one of the 2 developers, along with Pat McKenna. With me this evening also is Bob Michaud, who is a traffic engineer. The purpose of tonight's meeting, as we mentioned last time, is to get into traffic, to address the traffic analysis, where we go forward, to answer any questions that you may have, not only relating to the impact of this development, but also what's happening around the whole area, which I know is part of the issues as opposed to, in particular, 58 units. At the last meeting, when we went through the architecture and the landscaping and the site itself, there were a number of questions, a lot of them focused on the neighbors that were immediately impacted by the development. Blair Hines, who is the landscape architect, and his team have had the opportunity to reach out in the last month to speak to some of the abutters in that area. Blair will go through this evening some of his findings in relation to the site itself, and also some of the mitigation that we're going to get into in relation to that we think will be of benefit to the immediate neighbors, and we hope to the neighborhood as a whole. D'Artagnan Brown and Cindy Lee, who are the project architects, are here. There are not many architectural revisions, but if there are any specific questions, they can answer them. What we would like to do is to turn it over to Blair to kind of go through the architectural, then to go immediately to Bob Michaud on the traffic. If you could, we'd like to hold off to questions till the end so that we can get through the presentation and then leave the rest of the evening open to you for any questions that you might hear. Obviously, the whole team will be here to answer those questions in any specific discipline. So you have. So, Blair.
Thank you. Blair Hines here, and if I start talking low and you can't hear me, please raise your hand. So first of all, just to help orient everybody here, is that this is the west side that's going up towards River Street out this direction. This is the east side where Waltham Street comes and connects in with Pleasant Street. So that will give you some sense of where we are. Just briefly, there are 3 buildings to the east side that are 3 stories, correct?
Correct.
And then we have an existing brick building up and through here, which is labeled E, a new commercial building to its right, labeled D, and then a new 5-story residential building on the west portion of the site. In terms of the landscape planning here, we really have 3 purposes of the plan. One is to enhance and create a more attractive streetscape along Pleasant Street. Secondly, to provide landscaping to enhance the use of the site for the residents and for commercial users. And third, to mitigate the impact of parking and the development on the adjacent abutters. In terms of the streetscape, on the east edge of the site, we are proposing a whole series of shade trees and flowering trees along that edge, along with some stormwater planters in order to improve water quality from any of the runoff in this area. We also have a small little pocket park area over here immediately at the intersection. Moving further to the west, there's a handicap parking, accessible ramp to provide access into the commercial buildings. There's very little room along the front of the existing building in terms of landscaping, but where there is space, where presently there's a kind of a bank of rock, we'll have plants instead. As you may have recalled from the last meeting, there's actually going to be a first floor that's essentially at street edge, where right now in the commercial building it's up quite a bit from there. And then in front of the building furthest to the west, there will be a series of street trees as well. In terms of the mitigating the impact of parking and the development on the abutters, let me get this down here. I'm going to switch back and forth. There are 2 conditions. On the east edge of the site, back and through here, there is a series of parking spaces, and that for most of that distance, what we have is a situation where about 2/3 of it will consist of the parking is actually depressed from about 2 to about 5 feet below the grade of the residence immediately to the north. At the far east portion of the site, it's much more of a condition in which the residents to the north and the parking area to the south are essentially at the same elevation. Later on, I'll show you some cross sections that diagram that. As you go to the western portion of the site, behind the commercial buildings and adjacent to the large paved area of the Olympia Moving Company.
Can you point out on that where the commercial section starts? Is it on that line?
Yeah, right over here is the edge of the existing residences. I think there's 4 of them or 5 of them along Waltham Street. And then starting over here, there's that very large paved area where the trucks are. And their existing building, which used to be further this direction, I think comes to about here on this. So along that section of the development, we're looking at a wooden fence with some vines and shrub plantings, and then there's about 6 or 7 locations in which we can get some evergreen trees, and I'll show that as we move forward here. These are images of stormwater planters. What this consists of is not a pond, it just consists of a low area where the water off the roof or on the parking lot gets treated before it would go into the Charles River. And this is starting looking at this was not part of our last presentation, but one of the questions that had come up from a number of the abutting residents was, okay, what's happening, what's the relationship between our property and the new proposed housing. So in Building A, up in here, that's the one that's furthest to the east, where I mentioned before that the elevation of the development and the elevation of the adjacent residences are essentially the same. In this particular area, we have room for fencing and evergreen trees, and then towards the furthest to the east, there's additional planting of evergreens and other flowering trees. Moving in behind Building C, in fact, the development is almost 6 to 7 feet, depending, because the grade there slopes up towards the Olympia Moving Company. And in this situation, there'd be a retaining wall so that all the parking would be well below grade. And then above the wall, we're proposing evergreen planting and some fencing. We've also reached out to at least several of the residents there, and we're talking with them about doing some planting on their side of the property line and making some other improvements. And that will be offered to some other residents when we have a chance to actually finish meeting with them. This is the situation that addresses the condition along the furthest to the west, which is Building F, which is the 5-story building. But bear in mind, there's also Building E, which is a commercial building that's the existing building that's at about this high. So what these cross sections show is that the existing building of Olympia, if you took an angle from eyesight, if you're standing on the ground there near the property line and you looked across the top of the building, you would see the very top of the 5-story building in that particular location. Where that building doesn't exist, which is, I think, in the properties further to the west, the view would be much more directly of the building up to this point and about here. So you'd be looking at the top, probably 2.5 stories of the building.
What is that distance, Blair, from the house?
That's a good question, and I'm going to have to use my...
About 200.
It's about 200 feet. I should have known that answer exactly, Bill. Thank you. What this diagram down here is looking at is, what if the Olympia building changed and it was no longer a large parking area or no longer was a storage building and housing went in? And then if you looked at a housing that's at the same size and scale of the existing houses on Sweat Court and along the back of Waltham Street, we're showing, I think this is 35 foot high. And then in this particular case, if you were trying to look over buildings of that height, you wouldn't even see a 5-story building. I mean, between houses, you could see it, but again, this is just trying to show relatively that a building that's compliant to existing zoning is in fact taller relative to the adjacent residences than would a 5-story building at 200 feet. I mean, I still think it's a 5-story building, and you still see it as a 5-story building, but it's not like having a 5-story building, immediately at a setback. So that's essentially all of my presentation. I know some people have some questions, which we can pick up after the traffic presentation. Bill, did you want anything else to add?
No, I know that you've added some trees to the rear of Building
Yes.
F and some additional green space in that, but certainly we can get into that
Right.
if there are any particular questions, but maybe Bob Michaud can get into the traffic.
So, up and down.
Let me open up one of these.
Oh, thank you.
Wouldn't be very much help describing the plan, say the plan.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. So everyone who knows who I am. I'm a principal with MDM. My name is Robert Michaud. My firm is based in Marlborough, but we've done a lot of Watertown work. Spent a lot of my career actually in Watertown working for another firm. And we've had the pleasure of conducting a traffic impact and access study that has been submitted to the town. It's currently, as we understand it, being peer reviewed. The standard process in Watertown is to have an outside consulting firm look at our work to make sure that it's accurately portraying the impact of this project. And we've also had the benefit of recent studies along the same corridor
course, Water Mills, for instance, and the study that they prepared, and we're also well aware of certain actions that they're obligated to take from a transportation perspective that factor into this study. So with that introduction, I'll start by providing an overview of what we've looked at and the key findings of that so far. And, as much as I'm presenting tonight, I'm here much more in the capacity of listening to what you have to say, because you live in this area, and we want to make sure that we're understanding the issues that you're dealing with and that we're sensitive to those. So what we've done, and it's a little bit hard to see at this distance, so to speak, but we've looked at the portion of the Pleasant Street corridor that's bounded by the signals at Bridge Street to the west and Rosedale to the east, as well as, of course, the driveways that serve the particular site. We've quantified, we've gone out and inventoried and counted what kind of vehicle activity exists along that corridor over the course of the day and during the peak hours, the traditional commuter hours in the morning and the afternoon. To provide a little more context to this, what's shown, of course, is the outline of the site, very uniquely shaped, very rectangular and linear in shape. But it's also interesting to note where Water Mills across the street is committed to providing a link to the greenway in this area. And as Blair had mentioned, our development of a pocket park on the easterly side of the property links up very nicely with that connection. And one of the initiatives of this, it's not all about traffic, it's about multimodal transportation, is to provide the ability for folks who may either work or live at the site to take advantage of things like the greenway. And that becomes an important part of how we do the transportation planning here. So this is a context map that shows you the relationship between the site, where the Charles River Greenway is located along this edge, where Water Mills proposes a connection to that greenway, and how we're going to, in turn, tie into that, if you will. All right, so that's just simply a context map showing that intent. What we've done is schematically shown traffic volume conditions along Pleasant Street. This is based on information that we collected in December of this year. It augments and updates information that Water Mills had collected the year prior, also in December. Based on that information, in this particular example, this represents a snapshot in time during a weekday morning, commuter period, where it shows individual turning movements at the signal at Bridge Street here and at the signal at Rosedale here, as well as the intersecting driveways along the corridor that happen to coincide with where we want to propose driveways. And of course, the site itself is shown schematically, and there's a box here that shows what we expect for traffic generation for this, through a combination
My eyes aren't good enough anymore to see what.
to orient.
No, I got the orientation
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, so I'm going to walk through that. I'm sorry. So what's shown in really big arrows here are the change in trips over the course of a typical hour in the morning during a weekday commuter, either 7 to 8 in the morning or 8 to 9. It's not all of the traffic that occurs over the entirety of that period of time. This is a 1 hour period. It's intended to show a snapshot of the change in traffic that we expect from this project. The project itself is expected over a 1 hour period to generate just under 50 vehicle trips per hour. That's a total of vehicles entering and exiting the property. So where the commercial pieces would principally be an inbound trip, the residential piece would be principally an outbound trip, right? The combination of those trips is just under 50 per hour. And it's roughly split east and west based on information that we've compiled, looking at the existing patterns in the area, looking at journey to work information, where people are likely to work if they live here, and where people are coming from if they work here. These patterns indicate, when you apply the just under 50 trip standard, that if we were looking at the westerly area, Pleasant Street, Waltham side, we're talking about less than 10 vehicle trip difference or increase over the course of a typical hour. If we look at the Newton side, it's a little bit higher than that. It's just under 20 vehicle trip increase per hour. Less so on Bridge Street to the north, less than 5 per hour, less than 5 per hour in Rosedale Road, and again, a slightly higher number to the east toward Watertown Square at 15, where folks may opt to go either directly to the square or may get there through a combination of other streets, Green Street or Cross Street, for instance. These numbers reflect industry standard trip rates. They do not take into account folks who might choose to walk, or bicycle, use the greenway, use public transportation. These are unadjusted numbers and are consistent with the methodology that was used in the approval of the Water Mills project and other projects along its corridor. These will be subject to peer review. And so this is based on our professional experience and the method that we're obligated to use under a permit process like this. These are our first guesses, estimates as to what those changes are likely to be, unadjusted. If we look at the same condition during the weekday evening peak hour, the volumes are similar but slightly higher than those numbers. At about 18 vehicle trip increase from the east, from the Newton side about 20, and smaller numbers on Rosedale Bridge or Pleasant to the west.
I'm sorry, what season was this?
These are being presented for what we call an average condition. Now, we did our data collection in December, as did Water Mills, but we're obligated to make a correction or an increase to that number because December is not an average month. It's slightly below average. It's about 5% below average. And so we've taken those manual counts, and we also have video of those, so we have a permanent record. And we've looked at other studies in the area, Mass DOT databases and other factors, and we've said, you know what, we need to increase those by 5%. In addition to that, what we're obligated to do is to take into account any of the traffic that would be generated by Water Mills, the Bacon Street residential project, and other area projects, and add that to what we observed. And we also look further into the future, 5 years into the future, and we apply a growth factor, 1% annualized factor, to account for other area projects and the ebb and flow of traffic generally. So what provided the basis for our analysis is not just what we observed in December, it's that adjusted to reflect an average condition, plus those other projects, plus area growth, and then the impact of our project.
I was just curious because we're a seasonal business and we're in between Toyota and Jomar. So
yes,
traffic is a little lighter on our end during December.
Sure.
But then in the summer, in between there.
And that's precisely why we make those adjustments.
Yeah, that's why I was curious.
Just one real quick question. When you refer back to these other projects,
Yes.
Are they comparable in size? Because you keep referring to them that we don't know that they're relative size of comparisons to this project.
Sure, this is a point of comparison, and we don't rely on their estimates for our project. We simply take their information and we add it to what we're doing. Water Mills is about twice as large as we are, for instance. They're 99 units, we're 58. Their commercial is more than 20,000 square feet, we're less than 20,000 square feet. So
I have a reference.
yeah, and Bacon Street is similar size, I believe it is.
So point of clarification, and that you're saying that you're adding 15 going into Watertown Square, so that if I extrapolate, then Bacon Street is adding 30 plus Water Mills is adding 30. So the net total is,
75.
thank you. So
They're probably actually adding more because Bacon Street one's all residential, so you're gonna get even more people commuting.
So what you're getting at is the cumulative effect of these projects, and I understand
and that doesn't include what's happening in Waltham that's coming,
So,
that's also coming through.
right, so what I want to do is I want to.
I understand that that if you meet criteria, that's something, but what it's the compound effect that just, it feels as though everybody's just taking a little bit more water from the river, and we're getting thirsty.
Right, so again, what we're obligated to do for this individual applicant is to quantify this individual applicant's contribution, right? But we are also obligated to account for the other project impacts in the area, so that when we look at traffic operations, or we look at other things that we're obligated to do, like transportation demand management, we understand the larger picture of those other projects, right? So we're not dismissing them, but we're obligated for the permit to look at our impact
Right.
and add that to the other ones. So with that, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about, before we get into any.
Excuse me, could I ask another question about the roads? Does anyone here know the condition and the state of the Bridge Street Bridge? Or Bridge Street
That
Bridge?
can it structurally
Can it
handle?
structurally handle more traffic? Also, has anyone done any kind of study about what happens, because when you're coming down California Street and you turn onto Bridge Street, onto the bridge, you practically cannot get through,
Right.
as it is.
And I'll get to that in a moment. I don't personally know what the status of the structural integrity of the bridge or anything like that,
It
but I
doesn't
do
look
know.
good.
I do know this, that Water Mills was obligated through local approval to make improvements to the signal there, the signal at Bridge and Pleasant on the Watertown side, and likewise to Rosedale and Pleasant. And I'll speak to those in a moment, if I could just finish. But one of the most important parts of what we're attempting to do here, as would any project of this type along Pleasant Street, is to not focus entirely on how you get cars into and out of the property, but how you get people out of cars. And how do you market the property and provide incentives that allow people to do that comfortably. We are now obligated to file a Transportation Demand Management Plan, a TDM plan, in accordance with the Town Ordinance number 31. This is brand new. We're, if not the first, one of the first applicants to have to do this formally. And what that does is it requires a developer to buy into certain things that get people out of their car. Right? That's a simple way to put it. It means membership in the Watertown Transportation Management Association, TMA. That's a group of employers and residential developers, if you will, that provide an annual fee, if you will, contribution to this TMA, which provides information on public transportation services and ride matching, ride sharing. It's a larger group of businesses and developers, landowners that through a fee structure buy into this way of enticing people to use other modes of transportation, right? And that's newly formed. They are obligated to have a designated transportation coordinator who ensures that, for instance, if you want to sign a lease and rent at this property, that you're made aware of the availability of public transportation, bicycle accommodation. How do you get from the site to commercial uses or retail uses in the area without having to get into your car? There'll be a person that assists in making sure that message gets out. Parking on the site, which ordinarily when you lease property, you have access to a parking space. In this particular case, you'll be given a choice whether or not you even own a car to purchase at additional cost or rent at additional cost a space at this facility. That's called unbundling parking. And it's a very effective way very early on to allow people the option of saving money by not owning a car or not relying on a car. That'll be a feature of this plan. Of course, I mentioned the pocket park and the connections to the greenway. Those are design features that are going to be integrated in that make it an attractive option to get to the greenway. Showers and lockers for commercial tenants to the extent they want to have employees arrive by bicycle. That's becoming very much a trend now, especially in this area, that they have the ability to clean up, if you will, and rely more so on bicycle without having to worry about whether they can take a shower before they start their workday. On-site bike repair station. So to the extent people do bring bikes, there'll be a facility there that allows them to make tweaks to the bike or repair it to the extent they need. Covered bike parking. The dissemination of public transportation. Where are the routes? How much does it cost? What are the schedules? And I mentioned the greenway wayfinding and information. So there's a package of things that tie in with this obligation for the developer, and there are targets. This just doesn't end on paper. Annually, the developer would then be obligated to report back to Watertown, how are we doing? Are we actually getting people out of cars? And there's a quantified target that the developer will be made to comply with to get people out. So you monitor it, you measure how many people actually do take a car versus other public or walking modes of transportation. You report that to the town, and in this particular case, through the ordinance, they would be obligated to show that just over half of the folks who either work or live here would be using automobile, less 54% or less, and that the balance of that would be using these other modes. It's a very aggressive program and ordinance, and that.
What's the penalty if they
It's an ongoing process. It's a new ordinance. This is something that's been used regularly in Cambridge. I personally have experience monitoring facilities in Cambridge for the exact same purpose. And it's an ongoing iterative process. So if you're not fully meeting your obligation of 54% single occupant vehicle maximum, then you need to introduce new actions that might entice people to comply with that. And so it's an ongoing basis. It's not something that happens overnight, but there are programs in here like unbundling parking, for instance, that have been shown to be very effective at getting people out of their cars. So a lot of the younger folks in particular these days opt not to own a car if they live in a urban type environment where they have easy access to public transportation or access to a car sharing service, which is another feature of this plan. Water Mills, for instance, is obligated to provide several car sharing spaces that are right across the street from here that could be used by anyone who is a subscriber to that service.
Like a zip car?
A zip car,
And we
Avis.
have a requirement of one under the town's ordinance, so there will be one
Right.
shared car on the premises for tenants to use.
Right, and as you view other properties in the area, there becomes a critical mass of these car sharing spaces and vehicles.
I can't think of any buses that serve.
The nearest stop right now is at Pleasant and Bridge Street. That bus, MBTA bus, connects to Riverside. There's also a route, a bus route at Main.
It runs twice during rush hour in the morning.
Right, and then you've got another one up on Main Street at Rosedale, for instance, and of course,
Main Street's 24.
yeah, it's actually within a half mile of the site, which it's really not that bad. And I know through our experience, we've got a lot of experience working in the city of Boston, for instance, where
You say it's not that bad? How do you get out of 20 minutes from my house to 110th Street to get out for work now? Took me at least 40 minutes.
we're talking about people walking at this
You
point.
keep it talking, then I got something for you.
Okay, okay,
Keep it talking.
okay. Yes.
Does this take into account, because this is all great this time of year, I use the Greenway all the time, but one of my biggest challenges with the Greenway is that second it snows, the snow gets tromped on and you can't walk on it,
Right,
so
it's
if you're depending on people, and I do think a lot of young people would like to bike, or especially if there's a bike share at the developments and in Watertown Square, that would be a great option, but it needs to have a little plow and be plowed as well as the streets, because people do use it, but when there's snow and ice, it's scary down there.
It's very nice.
Yeah, and when you look at the range of folks who would rely on the Greenway, it becomes a collaborative effort between those entities and the town, frankly, to make sure that those get maintained. It can't necessarily be the responsibility of an individual.
Yeah,
No, I understand that, but with all of this happening in the town ordinance, it seems like
And the Greenway State.
It's state property. Well, it has nothing to do with the town, it's state property.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the
I'm
town.
actually curious if you guys would be required to shovel, because commercial entities have to shovel outside their properties, but there's no residential requirement. So because you're 20% commercial, I'm not sure exactly what your obligations are to shovel and.
Yeah, there'd be a commitment to shovel the sidewalks around the property,
Oh, okay.
shovel
The
the
whole
driveways.
not just the
The
commercial.
whole
part.
length of
Okay.
That doesn't get the
the
green.
property.
No.
The other thing that I hate, the other thing I want
Everybody else.
is is the TMA. And the TMA is a program in town through the town council that has started that they're having a lot of the larger employers in town, developments in town, work on acquiring shuttle buses that will service the various projects. Another way to get down to single occupancy vehicles, get them off the street. So another good goal that's there. The other thing that I think Bob will get to is, part of the study is to see what impact it has on the intersections around it. Is it going to have a negative impact? Is it going to have no impact? Is it going to have a positive impact when you look at how long you wait at Bridge Street, how long you wait at Rosedale if you're at those intersections? Those are all part of the study that Bob has done. They're all parts of the study that has been done on the street. And the mitigation that is required of the developers is done to improve the signaling that we have, to have smart intersections, to improve the streets, to improve the intersections, and through that to improve the level of service as you're driving down the street, so there's no long delays.
Correct me if I'm wrong, on the TMA and the shuttle buses, hasn't the town's consultant actually recommended not to have the shuttle buses?
So
Thank you.
he did make that recommendation, and it was not well received by the council, and it sounded like after the last meeting, we made it abundantly clear that we have full every expectation that there better be shuttle buses, and that's going to be a prime piece of what they'll be offering. So
When's that next?
They just had that meeting last.
And when's the next meeting?
I think next month.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing process, but just very honestly, my top priority is making sure there are shuttle buses as part of this process. And we've already identified Arsenal and Pleasant as the two areas that we're going to start these shuttles. And the shuttles are obviously going to connect these major developments to all state routes of transportation so that we can get folks from A to B so they can get to the city where most of them work without them using a car. Get 30, 40, 50 people off the road every 15, 20 minutes and do it during peak hours. So my goal is to have that be part of it. Needless to say, I'm going to be fiercely advocating for that piece because it's something I've been talking about for a year and a half, and it's going to be, in my mind, one of the best things to alleviate traffic congestion in this spot.
Why did you recommend against it?
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
So the developers that are paying into this program, there's not enough funding of what the ordinance does not require them to pay enough money to buy the buses, to pay the salaries of the drivers, etc. So.
Brian, what's the bump? I'm a shill, Andrew Adams, one of your senior planners. I think the figure for all in that they were banting around was something like, somebody kicked me if I'm wrong, $450,000, $500,000 all in with rolling stock. So you have to divide that up between primarily the private developments because they're the ones generating the most of the traffic. So we need enough heft in the TMA to spread that equitably. I'm not going to go into the details because it's not really germane to your frustration with trying to get up and down the Pleasant Street corridor, but it's not being ignored. It's just not very easy and it's not cheap.
No, but the problem is a lot of these projects have been approved and then therefore they're not now committed to pay that higher fee.
Right.
So they're only committed to pay the few hundred or the few thousand, and there's not enough in the bucket to get to that 500.
Yet we're getting more and more development, which is putting more and more pressure, and in some ways it's unfair on the new people, new
The
kids
new
on the
guys lose
block.
out because the old
Because
guys get in first.
you're getting screamed at for, yeah, but at the same time, you all are gonna suffer as much as we when your employees and workers can't get up and down Pleasant Street. It can take 20 minutes to go a mile, and your workers are gonna be as pissed as residents are, and your residents are gonna be
Moving out.
livid. And they're gonna be moving out.
And my question is that all those numbers you had about, 15 cars more going this way, how much of this guaranteed mitigation gets you to those numbers? I mean, that's wonderful. You anticipated A, and A meets the requirements. Terrific. You're looking at a block. We get that. We know it's the rest of it that's the problem. It's the cumulative. But does that are your numbers based on the presumption that this developer and Waterfall or whoever it is across the street are all gonna meet those same obligations? You know, I think that's a wonderful goal. I'm just not convinced that it's gonna happen immediately, as soon as you bring people in, or what timeline you have to get to that 54% and what happens until you get down there. So I'm curious as to, are those the ideal numbers? Because that's when everybody is in there. Does it include these shuttles you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or is that, well, if everything was perfect, this is it. But by the way, reality will be much higher because we hoped that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, so I'll make 2 points, and it's a valid concern you're raising. The numbers, the increases that I presented assume no TDM program was in place.
Okay.
Okay, so we're starting from what we assume to be a high estimate.
That's
All right,
encouraging to hear.
Yeah, and I've got many projects under my bag. I've been doing this for 30 years. We actually go back and revisit projects that are now built to see how they perform. And the estimates that we presented here are based on the industry standard. They're for suburban locations that are not located proximate to public transportation. They're unadjusted. I can tell you that we do a lot of residential apartment projects in Massachusetts. We've done dozens and dozens of them. We've gone back and looked at how they actually perform. And for many reasons, they're generating activity that's about 25% below what the industry standard suggests. And there's a lot of reasons for that have to do with flexible work schedules and people being more inclined to use things like car sharing services and things like that.
That's just hard, it's hard for us to swallow because with all the other meetings we've been to by the building, no, this isn't, it's only gonna impact 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, whatever. And now you can't get down Pleasant Street. So we say what we heard
Right.
and what reality was is so different. How do we know it's
So
any
the other,
different to follow that?
let me finish the answer. And the second point I was going to point out is that in this particular case, this is a very, very uniquely shaped site, as you can appreciate. And the parking supply on this site is less than what you would ordinarily provide for a suburban location. Under zoning, the bylaw, the town bylaw, we can take a reduction in parking, understanding that we are close to the greenway, that there's public transportation in the area, that we're going to sign on to a TDM program, et cetera. And so the amount of parking that's being provided here is actually about 12 to 14% below what the zoning ordinance would actually call for. All right, so we're in transportation speak, that means we're constraining the parking supply. We're not over parking the site. And when someone attempts to sign a lease, they go in full well knowing up front that they have to pay for extra for parking, number one, the disincentive, or an incentive not to have a car. And B, that there are limited number of spaces here. So they're making a conscious decision based on their lifestyle on living at a place like this that has a constrained supply.
I'm guessing there's going to be no condos here, it's all going to be rentals, which last meeting it was a not sure yet response to our issue about lots of rentals in Watertown, but nobody seems to want to buy no house.
I think the thinking at this time is to look at it as possibly a mixed development. That would be partially condos, not all rental. But a lot of that, honestly, will be dependent upon the market.
Market, I understand.
But the thoughts are that a portion of it, at least at this point, that a portion of it will be a condo development, which is unusual on the street.
Yes.
I just want to say, I think it's really important to emphasize what this woman said, which is that if you're depending on the greenway to be an appeal to residents as an alternate way to get around, as soon as the weather shuts down the greenway, that's not there, and people are not going to be able to rely on it. So it's that, I don't think you can factor that in. It's only going to be available part of the year.
Understand that we're not hanging our hat on any one particular aspect of transportation here. It's a cumulative effect of having MBTA service at least 2 stops within a half a mile. It's having the greenway nearby for a good part of the year, winter, barring winter, I understand that issue, but also, the other aspects of charging for parking and constraining parking and having other aspects of transportation demand management that all cumulatively come together to entice people to get out of their cars, car sharing service. There's a whole bundle of things here. So we're not pretending to hang our hat on the Greenway, and we're following the requirements of the ordinance and structuring this the right way. Now, I will say that some folks will opt to drive here, and whether you're a resident or a worker, right? We understand that. That's how these sites function. But we also know that there are commitments by other development, Watermill in particular, that have to do with traffic and transportation, right? And we know the signal at Rosedale itself as a standalone location, independent of anything else, was rebuilt by the city in 2009/10. That it operates at a very high level of service as an independent location. When you work toward Bridge Street, it's a different story, right? We all know that you live with it. We've observed it. We've recorded it. We've analyzed it. We know that there is a relationship between both ends of Bridge Street on the Newton side and the Watertown side. Those signals don't talk to one another right now, right? They live in different worlds. This developer, Watermill, is committed, required to provide what's called a grid smart system, right? It's an advanced traffic monitoring system, detection system, that will be installed on the Newton side, the Watertown side of Bridge Street, and at Rosedale, right? And that system allows, in combination with other things, for coordinated operation of the signals. Newton is already invested in trying to coordinate the signals in Bridge Street. They're not there yet, but they're going to receive assistance through the Watermill project in the town of Watertown to make that happen. When that happens, the congestion and the queuing that you see occur today, part of which is, you get through Watertown and you're at a red light again, right? You can't move, you're at the back of a queue. That will be mitigated, that'll be alleviated when those signals are coordinated. So if you get a green light traveling southbound on Bridge Street in Watertown, by the time you get to the back of queue, it begins to move because the signals are then coordinated in that direction. And likewise on Pleasant Street. So the Grid Smart system is an obligation of another developer, and we've assumed that in our study that because it's a requirement, it will be implemented. As a result, the vehicle queues and delays that you see today will be less under that program. And we've included the effect of our project in that evaluation, which shows that relative to today, things will actually work better, even with the traffic that I just presented. All right. Now, there will be other obligations that we have as an individual applicant to contribute to making traffic work better, more safely, to enhancing pedestrian environment. And we're working through those issues with the city and through the peer review process, right? So we're still formulating those in addition to the TDM program that I just mentioned. So we're very cognizant, and this developer wants to see things. There's a vested interest in making sure that traffic moves reasonably well here. They want to be a contributor to that, but we're working through exactly how to do that.
So I have a question to that point.
Yes.
So you had mentioned earlier that you have experience of going back and looking at projects that you've done after they've implemented some of the signal changes and some of these other types of things.
Sure.
What do you usually see as a result? Is it usually a net positive result in the end? Is it sort of 50-50 depending upon how it gets implemented or what the town's buy-in is? What's your experience with it?
Yeah, well, as a consultant, transportation consultant, my job is to make things better. Right, that's what we do, and I've got a long track record as a company of doing that on very specific projects. I can tell you that we always rely on trip estimates that are conservatively high. We like to guess high. We'd rather guess high than low. And once we understand what needs to be done to make traffic flow better, like retiming or rephasing a traffic signal or coordinating its operation, that, without exception, after the fact, once those improvements are made, always makes a difference, always. All right. Now, I can't speak to other projects that I'm not involved with, but I can tell you that in any case that, we have developers who are spending tens of thousands of dollars to make things work better because it'll help them too, that the outcome of that is an improvement, a benefit, and that's what we're attempting to do here. And again, we're not solely focused on cars here. We are as concerned with people who are on foot or on bike or who want to use public transportation, and that's the TDM component of this. So we look at it globally, understanding that traffic is a component of that.
You had referenced a 1% population increase over the next 5 years. Is that an accurate number, do you think?
Actually, what we've applied, and it's consistent with what Watermill did and some other projects, is 1% annualized traffic growth.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily tied to population. It has to do with, if you look at, bless you, growth in traffic from area count stations, for instance, or regional planning agencies, they have a running record of how traffic grows. For this area, the growth is closer to 0.5% annually, but we've nonetheless used a higher number. We're again guessing high, because traffic, as you know, is not, it's trying to do a Picasso with crayon sometimes, right? So it's human nature.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
On the estimates for the traffic, there's going to be business in building D.
Yes.
Building D, and there'll be commercial in E. And you don't know which companies are going in there yet, so how can you even project, comings and goings of the business people?
It's a really good question. Yeah.
And then the visitor parking, is there any visitor parking for any of these buildings?
Yes, so the approach that we've taken here is to apply, we actually started off the process thinking that some portion of this might actually be retail. And when I say retail, I don't mean big retail pharmacy or anything like that. I mean neighborhood type retail. The market ultimately drives the selection of tenants in the building. So our original estimates, at least for part of the building, 8,000 square feet, we assumed a retail use, which is actually a higher generating use than traditional office use or other uses. So we started off with that assumption. In reality, the likely tenants of this type of development would be a law office, a very small tailored accounting business, a CPA, R&D. The size of this commercial is relatively small. It would not be somewhere that a large corporation would look to go with lots of employees. It's very much a homegrown type local business orientation. And as a result, we've estimated, nonetheless, using a standard office use, whether it's small or large, we've used that. We believe it again, is a high estimate of what's likely to occur here. But the parking for that is in accordance with the local zoning, which includes provisions for folks who may visit the business. And
residential, like parking for the visitors there too?
Yeah, well, the way this is structured is that you have access to the commercial spaces if you're a resident of this. So once those businesses are closed, usually around 5 or 6 at night, when you would be inclined to have visitors or on a weekend, those spaces would most likely be available for visitor use. And so that's the shared parking concept. And that's consistent with TDM programming as well. You want to encourage those synergies between uses, which we do here. Yep.
Yes, I just have a question. Here the entry over there on this building you guys built, the entrance is closer to the light, right? I wasn't there?
So this is the closest building to, I'm sorry.
No, the other way.
Oh, okay, so these are the 3 residential buildings, this road, yeah.
Watertown Street.
Yeah.
All right, you got the entry to go inside.
Oh, sure, yeah, the driveway, yeah.
You know over there, the place on the street is just one line. You have 3 cars.
Yeah.
They turn the Watertown Street to go to Rosendale. How do you gonna stop the traffic come from over there? You got 3 light over here, 3 car over here. All the sudden it's a 5 car behind. Now the other 5 cars they move over there, and they block the people who go straight. How do you stop that?
So
how do you stop that? You tell me.
Yeah.
And then the other way around, if you come the other side of Watertown Street, you got to go all the way down, and then you got to come in again on that side. What's the other people gonna go? Because I walk every morning, 5 to I'm up, I walk every morning. I know how many cars they go, how many cars they don't go. At night, you cannot move.
Yeah.
At night, you cannot move.
That's right.
Because now you say you go to Bridges City as a traffic. Do that over there with 3 cars go to the building over there. And you stop all these lights that go way down. How do you do that? How do you stop that? Another question.
Okay.
And one of these, when they build the one across them, how are you gonna stop all that traffic coming in for over there? You gonna have a light? You have a light to go in? To go inside? You have a light to come out? You gotta block everybody over there.
Yeah.
Is there a better photo that we can get other than that?
Yeah, there's a site plan, Cindy, that maybe we can load up, or just a hard copy.
Related to that, there was a big report on NPR, I don't know if anyone heard it, about now that people are using Waze and other apps that
Yes.
that people are diverting off of streets like Pleasant Street, and now they're going to be going down Rosedale, and they're going to be going down Waltham Street. And this is an old established residential neighborhood where kids are accustomed to playing in the streets, and all your traffic is talking about Pleasant Street, and that seems kind of industrial. I mean, there are residences that abut that, but what's it going to do to Rosedale and Falmouth and Bridge Street, like, and Waltham.
Evans Street, Rutland Street,
Edward, excuse me.
Yeah, Edward is turning into a speedway.
Rutland Street.
Yeah.
To add to what this gentleman was saying about, the mix of cars, I think cars migrate to free parking. And if there's free parking on Waltham Street, they're going to be parked bumper to bumper on Waltham Street, which is going to create even worse of a backup for people who want to turn that corner.
Yeah, never mind that, but when they build the other building, because it's a rail to get repaired, how are we gonna do over there?
Yeah.
And you can't
You
do
know what I
it
mean?
this
How
way.
are we gonna do?
So I'm hearing a lot of questions, and I'm trying to
And
distill
then,
it.
excuse me if I interrupt.
Okay.
You go all the way down the place on the street. You know what the light reach? You know what the car stop where the pool is? Now you gotta wait for that pool if you get lucky, half an hour.
Yeah.
Half an hour if you get lucky. If you go to Main Street, because the people now they learn, they start to be smart. Oh, let's cut the Main Street. Now Main Street is blocked, is taking out half hour. So to get out of me on Watertown Street to get out of Watertown, it takes 45 minutes. I counted the other day. I went 9:20 to see my daughter. I get out 45 minutes from Watertown Street. You tell me. You can't go over there. You can't go over there. You can't go to Bridges Street. You tell me.
So a lot of the issues that you're raising are, they're global issues, right? People are going to make conscious decision if they opt to live here, understanding, what the area entails.
And it's
right?
an all
So-
understand. That's what it is. It's right in your face. It's in our face.
Exactly, and I don't have a perfect answer for that. I'm
You know what I
not-
mean? And then, Watertown Street, they zoom.
Yeah,
They
so,
zoom.
so part of what I'm hearing is speeds and increased volumes, right? And there are things that can be done for traffic calming, for instance. Those could entail placing, certain design features in the road that slow people down, right? The speed radar signs, always stop signs. There's a whole host of things that can be done, and I'm not going to pretend that an individual developer is going to be able to solve all of that, right? But again, I had mentioned that this project is going through a peer review process. We're aware that the neighborhood, through other project reviews and your input from prior projects, have similar, you've stated these concerns, and we're aware of those generally. And we're trying to do what we can as an individual developer to contribute and make a difference to the neighborhood. So we haven't formulated or formalized a mitigation package for this, right? And I'm listening, as I mentioned at the start of this, that if speeds and cut through and other things are a concern of the neighborhood, that we can start to think about how we might contribute to that for traffic calming, right? So I appreciate the comment.
But the thing is, on the line of day, when you take a Rosendale to go left and wasn't there. It's 3 car the turn.
Yeah.
Because it's no way. Now you gotta tell me if it's like a 5 car, the other two car, back of the 3 car, they move over there. Now this, it can go through. It can go through. It's you see on every street like that. You got train over there, you can't because it blocked. You know what I mean? You go. If you go to Soul Dry, like I go to the hospital, you want to go to Massage, you can't go because people, they cut the line all day. They want to cut inside. People do that. Everybody do that because they want, they're lean, they're whatever.
Yeah, so there are a lot of driveways along here, right? We have a local business owner, and, you know, I've driven the corner personally.
I know you try to make a piece of him, you know what I mean? You gotta make us first happy.
Yeah.
And then them.
I understand.
Okay.
So we've been careful to look at how to design the driveways so that it minimizes the delays that people will have from the road. And we've talked to the Public Works Department about that. It's being reviewed by peer reviewer. You know, we're thinking about those, right? So the way this is currently designed, right, and because of the shape of the project, right, and the difficulties of how we need to make this work, the exiting movements from the property are all happening at the central point of the property, right? It's the best, right, yes. So if you're leaving this property, you're doing that at the central part between the signals, right? It's
So,
the best place to do that.
Another thing, why the Henry go with the exceed?
Sorry, what?
The Henry, they go on this condominium, that the one you pay, why you gotta be around with the light? Why don't you go over there in the middle? You switch. The entry, the exit.
So this is an entry driveway.
At least you have the light over there to get out of the building.
Well, here, and we've discussed this with Public Works, and you know, I couldn't in good conscience have that as an exit. I can tell you, Public Works.
That's what I thought, you know, I mean, who the hell about
Public
that?
Works has an
Who's
issue
the
with that.
architect? Excuse me, if I interrupt you, who's the architect over here? Because I think you must be blindsided. What do you put that thing over there, the entry over there?
Well, there's
Because
a
that's
driveway
all
there
right.
now. There's a driveway there now. So we're not creating something that doesn't already exist.
Well,
And
you know, I mean,
Nobody uses
we gotta
it.
see this.
But you can't have the exit right at the light. You never
It's an
get
entrance,
out.
it's not an exit.
Right, the
Correct.
entrance at the light.
And so the best option for that is as an entry,
Yeah.
right? And we know that if you're coming from the Waltham side, you can get into the property on this side, right? That's an entry driveway as well, right? You have to come out here. Anyone who's coming from the east over here, their first opportunity to get in here is a right turn into that driveway.
I
Into the
understand, but the light is so fast,
Yeah.
if you got a 5 car to turn over there and the entry, the other car can't go because there's one line.
And it depends on the time of day and a lot of things, right?
It depends on the time of day.
But-
There's
and
always a
people-
traffic on the light over there.
And if I'm driving here and if I have
live
a,
over there, I walk, I know.
oh no, I know
I
you
know,
know.
I believe on that street over there for 48 days.
Yeah.
I know what the traffic is, how many times they change it back and forth.
Sure.
And no work, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing will work.
So, yeah, thank you.
It's a tricky area because you're between two main lights. Now, the street sucks, but now you're adding 3 more driveways on top of all of our commercial where you're thinking just cars. What about all our deliveries? I mean, Toyota gets truckloads of cars in. You know, we get truckloads. Exogen gets truckloads. This is every day. You know, and in December, you don't have our trucks very often, but like in the summer, Jomar, who's right at the end of, I mean, we're right on the other side of that. That's,
Sure.
You're adding a lot of traffic in and out on now both sides. That's a lot to, you know, we don't have to worry about. I mean, obviously, this place was never going to be empty forever, but I mean, right now you don't have much traffic on one side, which helps. And now you're having 3 driveways against all of our driveways. I mean, that's going to add a lot of traffic.
There's currently 3 driveways. Just
Right, but
But that's
it's
nothing
it's nothing
there
there.
for as a practical matter.
You know, Ford has their trucks there, they come and pick them up every so often, it is what it is. Now you have 3 residential where people are coming in and out, but you also have huge trucks. Every single one of those businesses have trucks in and out.
Sure.
All you hear is beeping all day too. I mean,
Again, I can't speak to why someone would choose to live here, but they're going to be.
Which is fine.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a bad way. But if someone visits this site, it's the best. I'll pay for that later, but if you're going to visit the site and make a conscious decision to rent here, and I'm sure many people would like to do that, younger crowd, and you know, maybe they work in town, maybe they work in Boston, they want to use the T to get into town. They're going to understand that when they see it. You know, and we've worked on many sites that have converted commercial property to residential use, including in industrial parks, where people flock to it and they understand what they're getting involved with, right? That's the evolution of the zoning in this particular area. It was intended to create what you're seeing here as a proposal. That was the intention of the zoning. But it's, you know, clearly people are going to have those decisions to make when they rent.
So when they're going to build all these things? Why did they forget about the commercial? Why they just build the fuel?
Well,
why they going to build all those?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is theoretically we have buses. And theoretically, you know, we do have the Greenway, but if you're really pushing the fact that this is a great place to take public trans and to walk and bike, it's not. And it's until we fix, and you kicked the whole plowing the Charles River Bikeway. I know that's not the developer's responsibility, but the reality is people can and would commute year-round using that path if they could, and I'm not saying everyone would, but hopefully if you attract the right people that want to bike to work to this community, that would help. But we've got to, we need a better bus or shuttle or public trans system.
And that's a comment not just for you, but for our representatives who are here, and building off of that, I also think about public safety. The times that the traffic on Bridge Street, you literally can't get over Bridge Street, or you can't get down Pleasant Street. And I think
you can't walk. Walking there is scary.
So I think as and this truly may not be a conversation, but it's a conversation for public safety, which is how much can we get overloaded before literally someone's going to die because there's so much traffic and lights aren't coordinated. And the other thing is we hear, oh, well, there'll be traffic mitigation. We were promised traffic mitigation. How many times? We're just a pretty sophisticated audience. We've heard your presentation, different person, nicely pressed suit, whatever. Same story. So we're pretty good at it and we're sympathetic. You're in business. We are all trying to make a living too. But hey, Bridge Street, we're going to get traffic mitigation. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. And it doesn't happen. So we get the list of the pretty things. Oh, we're going to put flowering shrubs and it's going to be great and we have a connection to the river. Don't worry about it. But we see that cumulative effect of traffic we can't get across the street. And then adding to the winter time, Ken mentioned the fact that residentially we're not required to plow our sidewalks. So if you can't in the winter walk up the bike path, so you try to walk on Pleasant Street. I've actually almost stopped for strangers a couple of times and say, get in my car because you're gonna die if you continue.
Yeah.
So those aren't necessarily you, but this is an accumulation of knowledge that we're seeing, and then accumulation of this pressure that isn't getting fully addressed. And I feel like we're being told, please wait, no, this one's going to fix it, and it's just not.
Well, and if you're going to bill it as here's all the reasons people are going to bike, then you need to know the reality of the biking situation, which it's only good 6 months out of the year.
Look at the new ordinance has teeth, and this developer, has done a lot by way of limiting the amount of parking that's being provided here, and still in the process of developing other measures, working with the city. They're making a big investment here too. They don't want it to fail either. And so, with that understanding, mitigation, coordinated signals, for instance, come as an outcome of these projects. And in that case, Watermill is not yet built. They're not on the start block, so to speak, to actually implement those until that foundation starts going up. So the things that are committed by legal obligation of a developer, and it is a legal obligation, have to happen. It's not just something on a pretty piece of paper, it's a legal obligation, and as would be the case for this development, you know. So the TDM has teeth. There's a vested interest in making sure that it does work. And we're confident that we're going to make a positive difference with what we're doing here. And it's going to be on paper, and it's going to be a legal
Where would those
requirement.
stops be?
I'm sorry, some of us have been raising our hands and been very patient while others have had multiple opportunities. If I could, I actually have a recommendation because I don't think, with all due respect, and again, you're new to this scene and we're not. Just a couple of numbers first, and then I want to give my recommendation. Numbers, 278 units. Just in, if you draw a little circle around, if you do your units, the water mill, river bank, and the ones going in Howard Bacon. So 278 units are poised to go in this area. You are 58. But we want you to know the context into which you're going. And that's why we want to know the traffic reports. Are they seriously, have you thought about 278 units in this very small congested area? Because that's what's going in and up and landing very similar timeframes, it seems. Howard Bacon's ahead of you. The River Park lofts are ahead of you. The River Bank lofts, excuse me, all the names are similar, are also 56 coming in. So that's what we as nearby residents are looking at and concerned about. There are 1,039 units across the Pleasant Street corridor that have gone in since 2005. 1,039. We have not one additional bus line. We could just paint the picture here. You've talked about transportation, but not one single additional bus has been added. So those same 2 bus stops you talked about, all these units, all these people, all riding the same number of buses. It doesn't work. All the additional cars on the streets, and all we've seen and heard about are we've changed the timing of the Bridge Street lights. And we've done a little more signage. Well, I'm sorry, but that is not enough. And having a plan is not enough at this stage. We shouldn't be doing this kind of development at this pace without building the transportation and parking and systems along with it. So again, not blaming you for all the things that have come before you, but you need to know what you're going into. So your residents, the residents of this place, are going to be very frustrated. You're going to point out the bus stops, and they're going to stand there, okay, and watch 4 buses go by before they can get on one. What can you do? My recommendation, we've been making it for 4 years. Forget about this the TMA fine. Get the money, but get a shuttle. You don't have to wait for the town. As a condition of this development, you should add a shuttle, period. And then let the town get on board and get the other developers and do it as fast as they can. It's shameful, it should have happened already, but that's what you can do. And just one other thing, because I took the time to look it up. People in the room probably don't know that Watertown is among the top 6 towns in the entire state. We have built more multifamily units since 2010, and we are ranking up there. It is Boston, Cambridge, Chelsea, Everett, and Watertown. This according to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They're the numbers gurus on planning and development. The problem, what's the problem with that? It's not that we're building multifamily. That's great. The problem is we don't have the transportation system to support that kind of development. Boston does, Chelsea does, they're all major cities. We're not. They have MBTA. Some have commuter rail access and bus lines. And guess what? Some of them require developers to have shuttles as a condition of the development. The least we can do is start with that and then work on what we should have been doing all along, which is a transportation plan that accompanies the development plan.
Hey, Paul, I know this lady's had her hand up for a while.
So, when you did
study in December on the traffic patterns, was the development across the street at full capacity, and is it at full capacity now, do you know?
Watermill?
Yes.
It's not built yet.
It's not built yet.
Right,
Oh,
so,
great.
right.
So this is a study that you're assuming how many cars they have as well as how many cars you're gonna have.
Correct, right,
Okay.
and their study, we rely on their study, which was peer reviewed, independently peer reviewed, right? So we took those approved numbers and we added them to what we counted.
And then I had one comment about the limiting the parking on this development.
Yep.
I think it's a little naive to think that people aren't gonna get cars and then they're gonna park on Waltham Street in the summer. Then in the wintertime, when there's a parking ban, they're gonna put the cars in a business parking lot, just so they don't have to pay for the parking. So you're not really taking those cars off the street. And knowing the kind of I have children, the age group that you're trying to attract to your development, and that's what they're gonna do. They'll be like, oh, no, I don't need a parking spot. And maybe at first they won't have a parking spot, and then the first winter comes when they're trying to walk down Pleasant Street to get to the bus stop, then they're gonna be like, I have to have a car, and then they'll be parking it wherever they can get parking for free. And I think it's just a little naive on your part to just say that, well, we're just not gonna, we're gonna limit the parking spots so that'll make for less cars. I don't think that that'll be a reality.
This is I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just a very quick layer on that, just an increase of parking along that road would only make that more of a one-way than it already, it's a two-way right now, Waltham speaking. It becomes more of a one-way. There are, that I know of, about 3 police officers that live around the neighborhood. I've spoken with them. They've caught cars going 60 down Waltham Street.
Easily.
So if you make Waltham, which is now two-way, and as one of my friends says, shitty as the road as it is, going 60 miles an hour, you add more cars, just daily commuting. What about just people walking, the safety of cars? I mean, the amount of cars I've seen almost hit each other because they're going so fast.
And couldn't you not
What
get a
kind
fire
of-
truck down too, they said, the police
Yeah,
officers?
the parking, which is a very valid point. Because of the parking, even the fire trucks are so big that you can't get down some of the streets because of all the parking.
So that
I think it's more of a safety issue.
Well, I have a question. You folks live along Waltham Street. I know that there are parking restrictions along Waltham Street. I suspect that if someone is illegally parked there for any length of time, that they're at risk of getting a ticket or towed as a result. Right?
Yeah, but
what's been the experience of the neighborhood in that regard?
There are enough families that you need to have the street parking for a lot of the multifamilies that are already on the street.
Yeah.
And so in the summertime, they're allowed to park all day, all night on the street. And
It's only winter parking ban when you can't park on the street.
Right, but I know, and this portion of Waltham Street, there's no parking allowed, period, on Waltham Street.
On one side.
On one side.
Just on one side.
And you're saying
And then
that
there's
people
multiple side
regularly park
streets.
on.
Yeah, and all those side streets too, everyone
And then they
parks
park
on.
on all the side
From Bridge
streets
to
too.
Rosedale is, that lane is, you're allowed to park on.
Yeah, but you
And it's true, it's right around the corner, especially young people, yeah, they're gonna bring in cars for the summer months, and when they're not allowed to park there, they'll take them back to their parents' house. That's what we do.
I will say that the parking supply, while we're saying it's constrained, it's based on, again, I'll speak to experience of actual parking use of these facilities. We have a lot of data on that too. And, parking in a facility like this typically has a vacancy rate of close to about 20%, right? So that allows some flexibility in the ebb and flow of whether you have visitors or not, time of day of week. And while I'm saying that we're reducing the parking supply here, what I'm not saying is that we're reducing it to a point that's going to create a problem. In fact, the town wouldn't allow us to do that, right?
But if you
their
charge
own-
for it, it's gonna be less desirable to
Yeah, and
extra
then do you
for
hit
it.
your numbers if people are still parking on the street there, because technically they don't have a car?
Again, the new wave, and we work a lot with larger residential developers in the Commonwealth, both in the city of Boston and in suburban places, right? And I can tell you that their experience, and they've said this publicly, and they plan projects around this, is that many of particularly the younger generation are opting much more today not to even own a car, right? And the target market, and I don't pretend to know the marketing for this, and I'm not going to go there, but again, when you look at the availability of parking, the proximity to other types of features like public transportation, and it does exist here, and it is not unreasonably distant from this site, and you look at things like Greenway, which is available most of the year, those are factors that individual tenants consider when they're going to rent. And the experience of larger developers, and we work with the largest ones in the Commonwealth, show that what used to be a parking supply that they aim for and build at a lot of money, at high cost, they're now able to reduce that because the market is oriented much more toward the younger folks who don't want to own a car, or they may not own 2 cars, they'll own 1. And so, we're comfortable based on real experience in today's market that the parking supply that's being proposed here will be adequate for this site. It will not be so constrained that people are going to say, gee, I'm going to go park at the fence company, or I'm going to go park on Waltham Street, at risk, by the way, of either being towed or ticketed or who knows what.
Bob, I know that Brian, for one, is waiting for
It's okay, you can keep going.
Sorry.
It's all right.
So I was just trying to make the point that, we're very conscientious. I mean, the developer doesn't want to, create such a constraint that they're not able to effectively market and sell or rent their units. That's the point. I'm sorry.
I've been kind of confused. Are we talking about your study from December and January?
What I've presented to you now is based on our study. This is our study.
Yes, but from the December, January.
Yes.
Correct? So, Mr. York, where I'm confused is when we were here in June, you said that there would be an updated study presented tonight.
Right.
And so I haven't seen that on the town website. So why are we discussing this December one when we were expecting an updated one?
Because this is our study. This is the analysis that was done by Bob.
Yes.
The hope was that the peer review would have been completed.
But it clearly states in your minutes from the June meeting,
Yeah.
the discussion regarding traffic was deferred to the second meeting for July 27th. The latest traffic study will be submitted to and available from the Department of Community Development and Planning website prior to this meeting. So
Correct.
that study was already done. We're
No,
expecting the latest
What
one.
we were looking at was the peer review.
But that's not what you stated.
That's what I was looking at, was the peer review, because once we receive the peer review, we'll have the input from the town's independent reviewer. So that's what I was talking about.
It would have been good to said that from the beginning, though. It really would have. To start the meeting with this gentleman's statement, that would have been the fair thing to this crowd.
Okay.
Because we were expecting an
Well, I did
update.
say at the beginning.
We were
that
expecting an
this
update.
is- This is out to peer review now.
Which has nothing to do with your study.
We had-
That's a separate study.
But that's part of the documentation, that's part of the traffic study.
Not your traffic study, that's the town's
That's correct.
that you're paying for. That's
The-
separate.
The traffic study that we have is complete.
But that was complete a month ago.
That was complete in December, January.
Exactly. So
And-
why a month ago did you say the updated study will be presented tonight?
If I said that, what I meant to say was to refer to the peer review study and the analysis of that. And if the peer review requests more information from our traffic engineer to study, for example, another intersection, that would be part of that too. So we have fully examined all of the
You've done your
areas.
part.
We've done everything that is required at this point. That's complete. If I confused you, I apologize for that, but that was not my intent at all. What we hoped to have done was to have the peer review completed by now, but we don't have control.
Sure, definitely. So in follow-up, my one question is, since you're a different, I'll call you an engineer, hopefully that's
I am.
appropriate. Okay. For a prior project, we received a grade
Yes.
letter on Bridge Street in
Yep.
Pleasant.
Right.
Do you have a grade for that?
Yeah, and I heard through the grapevine that you had that question.
Yes.
And so I did some homework, because I wanted to understand the same question. So the nature of the question is that Watermill did their own study, right? They did counts in 2015, December of that year, as it turns out, made their corrections, analyzed, subject to peer review, and they had a series of results or letter grades assigned to how these signals work. When we do the same process, our results are slightly different than theirs. Not so much at Rosedale. Rosedale is a B, it's going to be a B. Sure. But the signal on Bridge Street is a little more complicated. When that applicant did their study, they used a certain set of assumptions as to what the signal timing was at Bridge Street. Right? A year later, we do counts, and we have video of this, and we actually time, what the average amount of green time is for each particular movement within the signal, right? We know that there's a difference between the assumptions that they used at the time that they did their study and what we used currently. And I don't know whether the town made adjustments to that since 2015 that, changed the way that works or not, but that's probably what happened. We stand based on the results that we have published now as being appropriate based on today's condition, right? The second point is that that applicant did not conduct an analysis of improved operation, if you will, of the signal once the GridSmart system was implemented. We assume that the GridSmart system will be implemented under the no-build condition because they're required to.
Exactly.
And so we ran the analysis assuming that that was in place, and it's going to work better as a result. So that there are differences between what was published in their study versus what's in ours for those two reasons.
Okay.
All right, and that'll be subject to peer review. We are well aware that, and even tonight, I spent an hour here, driving up and down the corridor and really getting a feel again, and I've done that in the past as well, and so with my staff. That there is an ebb and flow of traffic here, right? It's on average typical to see that queue from the signal at night, for instance, reach to about the midpoint of the site. And it can go beyond that, absolutely. There were 2 fire trucks that came through at 5:15 tonight. All right, and that caused more of a backup as a result. So there are a series of things that might happen along the corridor that cause it to be congested. But what we're saying, and what is an obligation of the Watermill folks, is that they'll improve the technology at the signals so that they can work more efficiently, so that the queues that you see today won't be as long. They'll be shorter. And that even if we're adding the 12 cars or 15 or 20 here and there, that the operations under that scenario with that technology in place will be better than you see it today. It'll be an improvement. And that's really what we're trying to get to.
Well, like how much? Like
how much of an improvement?
A letter on it.
A letter. Today, without going through every aspect of this, the left turn westbound at night on Pleasant Street is an E. Okay. That will become most likely a D. Okay. With that improvement. So we're looking at probably a letter grade improvement.
Because of those GridSmart.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it won't stop the issue of fire trucking, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Question. Thank you. I want to say one thing. You have nothing the news for knowing what they should do on Bridge Street?
I'm sorry, what?
You don't have no news?
Oh,
if there is anything they're going to do on Bridge Street?
We know this, that the city of Newton wants to coordinate this signal. They have for years. But it requires some cooperation from Watertown. And then now we've got a developer who's willing to spend money to help make that happen. So we know that's going to happen.
So in other words, in the out, they fight.
Well, no, I think there's a mutual interest between, and we work in the city of Newton regularly, and I know those folks, and I know that they have an interest
Never
in...
going to happen that thing.
Well,
never going to happen that thing.
Okay, well, we'll see.
I know a few things, what I mean? I can't say of them from everybody. It never gonna happen, nothing. Stay there, it die there. You understand? We got to suck it in all the Pleasant Street and Watertown Street. It isn't those streets.
Okay,
I was curious, what's the total number of bedrooms and combination of the bedrooms? And also, what is the total amount of commercial space? And I just wanted to add to what that woman was stating earlier about growth and development in Watertown, because
I'm in the East End, and we're starting to get it. We're getting up to the 1,000 mark. You know, we've got the mall, we've got the Gables, we've got the Hanover, and all that coming. So it's cumulatively throughout the entire town, it's adding up, you know, to much more, like doubling what she was talking about. But I do want to know the total number of bedrooms, because that kind of makes a difference. Because if it's like, you know, about a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedrooms, how many number of bedrooms and total commercial space? Because I just want to know like how big a business could fit into there.
So we have a total of 58 units, and the majority of them are studios, 1-bedrooms, and we have these 1-bedroom lofts. And then of the 58, 36 is 2-bedrooms. So in total, 96 bedrooms. And the total commercial area is about 11,500 square feet. Split between the new commercial building and the ground floor of the restore mill building.
So the total number, you said 96 bedrooms?
I have a question about the traffic again. If I'm coming eastbound on Pleasant Street, I can take a left into the complex at the beginning of it.
Correct, yes.
Or I can proceed to just before Rosedale set of lights and take a left at the end of the complex.
Correct.
Is there any possibility, has it been looked at, is it a good idea, bad idea? I think it might be a good idea, to say if you're coming eastbound, you can't take a left at the east end of the complex. That if you're coming from Waltham to Watertown, you want to get in the complex, go in the first one. So you're not right there at that Rosedale set of lights. To this gentleman's point about how many people take a left on Rosedale and block the traffic coming the other way. Let the people coming from Watertown Square go through the Rosedale light and take the right, because nothing's going to stop them at that point, because they're on traffic. And I also agree that having people exit the complex from the middle at least keeps you out of that stopped at the traffic light. But have you considered, as somebody who's looking at traffic mitigation, of restricting that access to the east entry as only
Right
if
turn
you're
only.
coming westbound?
Because you also have people turning right from Rosedale that are gonna smack into people that are turning left. So just not anticipating.
That issue will all be part of peer review.
Right.
And the town's engineer, independent engineer, will make suggestions and put conditions that they think were appropriate for the community. And we will react to that and work with them.
Okay, I didn't know if it was something that you might have already looked at as saying, you think this makes sense, will the town let us design that it can light that way or not? But okay, so that will be a peer review issue then.
That'll be part of the peer review.
I would like to make a comment that developers, it seems that any way you cut it, it's like double, triple the amount of people living in a very congested area. And any way you cut it, it sounds very nice, but there's going to be a lot more cars. And yet you are destroying the trees that would absorb the carbon dioxide from all of this traffic. And nobody talks about that.
We did it the last
meeting. Yeah, the last meeting, but I mean, now it's over. Talk about it's finished.
No.
It shouldn't be finished.
This
How
gentleman.
soon is Watermill opening, and how soon is your project to break ground?
I don't know what the schedule of Watermill.
I can just give you, we don't know when Watermill is starting construction. They have received their special permit. The next step that they take is to seek building permits.
Okay.
We don't know where they are in that, but I'm sure they are probably anxious to get going. As far as this 58-unit proposal is concerned, we're hoping to bring it to the town, to the planning board, in either September or October for hearing. And if the project is approved, the construction would probably have to go through the building permit documents and probably start into construction sometime in the spring still.
And the other question was that, so once it gets approved, it doesn't need a special permit yet? Is there any variances required for this property?
No, it's only special permit, there's no variances. So
Okay.
everything is consistent with the direction of the Pleasant Street corridor and is consistent with the dimensional criteria.
So it fits all criteria, so there's really nothing holding this project up.
What we
In
need
theory.
is, we need special permit relief for, at least at this stage in the examination, because it is mixed-use development, and that requires a special permit. There also is for the town has, by special permit, the right to reduce parking by 25%. What is being sought here is something, I think the number is about 13.5%.
Very good.
Now what about when you start construction? What's the traffic? I mean, that's a narrow piece of land. How does that affect traffic on Pleasant Street? I mean, all these people that live on Waltham that already have problems, I mean, where do you think people are gonna avoid?
There will be a construction management plan that needs to be developed and approved by the town that would, involve everything from how are you gonna, get trucks to or from the facility, where's your fencing going, are you gonna use any portions of the public way, for how long, what kind of dust suppression measures are you gonna use? That's a separate process, if you will, and it will be a well-thought process, but we're not at that stage right now.
Is there a meeting for that, or?
Bill, I'm not sure.
No, but there'll be a requirement of a construction management plan, and that's all comes generally under DPW.
And carrying off of that, so there's, how long would, how long should this construction take? So how long is we going to be disrupted by construction?
3 months, 6 months?
Maybe about a year.
So there's noise associated with that. And this is a curiosity, we're that berm is going to be removed. And what is the noise impact to removing the wall of soil to having buildings? In terms of the amount of traffic noise that sometimes, I'm assuming we can hear from the Pike and Pleasant Street on times when it sifts over. I always assume that berm dampened noise, so are we going to lose some of the protection of that?
And you're talking about the berm with the sign is right now?
Existing berm.
So is there anything that can be, is there anything that can be done landscaping or design-wise to protect our quiet little wonderful neighborhood from the scary outside world?
That's what the plan is trying to do. Let me answer your question in 2 ways. During the construction phase, there will be noise ordinances that are in effect that will protect the hours of operation and the level of sound, the decibels.
Okay.
So they'll have to be maintained.
But then after
that, when the berm comes down, there will be, as you've seen from the plan, some fencing and some landscaping along the rear of the site, also at the front of the site. There will also be in the future buildings there that, like the berm, will serve as a barrier to any noises from south of the site.
Will the buildings be an equivalent block of noise? Or like what is the net
I would say greater. They have to be greater.
change in noise?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. That's something we can look at.
That would be really interesting because they're, depending on literally how the wind blows, the noise in the neighborhood changes a lot.
We can look at that.
That's great.
All right, I have a question for the architect. I'll lead you there.
Yes.
Mr. Architect, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes. I live on Watertown Street, all right? And I don't know, most of the people live on the left and the right, go down. I live on the right side. So now you have a big building over there, 5-unit house. They go right in my face of my house. I already get killed by the truck, the move truck, because they park right in the back of my yard. Anyway, I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and I said to him, I say, you put a 5-floor up over there, and you go on top of the hill, so it's almost like go maybe 6, if you know flat with that.
What?
Actually, I think back there, you
Yes.
can go higher.
That thing will go high. Now, the other one, they're low. Now, that one over there is a 5, plus you go up an hill. It's higher more. So I don't have, I can block the vision, I can block everything, I can block anything. Because I get jammed, you know, I mean, I get to move right there in my backyard. First of all, now I'm gonna breathe the fuse to the truck they park in the back of my yard. Second of all, now I gotta lose the vision over there. And I don't have, you know what I mean, what is this over here? We are polluted. All the people living on the right side, they all polluted for all these bus. I don't know, raise their hand, how many people living on the right side. All the truck are parked right in the backyard. And now on top of
From the
that.
Olympia storage.
Huh?
You're talking about Olympia storage?
Yes. I get jammed over there. I told the people, I told every time, I say, you guys have put the mother in the back like that. You smoke all of my yard. My grandkids, they can't go outside because all the smoke coming out. And then they make a noise, 5:30, beep, beep. I don't know who live over there. If you hear that noise, 5:30, because they got to put a compressor on the truck to make that beep. 5:30. You understand?
One of the purposes of Pleasant Street corridor study and zoning was to upgrade the uses along the street so that heavy industrial use that you're talking about,
Yes.
those trucking types of uses, eventually will move on.
Okay, you know how many truckers, these people over there come on Watertown Street? I end up fight all the time with the police, all the time over here. Every month I come over here. They come over there, because there's a sign over there, you can't go on a truck. There's a sign on Bridge Street, you can go on a truck. But they come, because you know why? Because they don't want to go on Pleasant Street. They got the shot. Before, long time ago, 35 years ago, over there was a bridge.
Right.
They can't go with the truck. Now they take it off the bridge, now they all cut to the Watertown Street. I built the wall a long time ago. I ended up doing twice my wall because the truck shake everything. And who pay me? And the tax, in the Watertown there is a tax on my house. And everybody on Watertown Street. You think it's right?
Well, the trucks are gonna affect the
We
new
don't
development.
have, that is not our.
Well, everybody got to do his own work. You guys want something, we want something. So the only thing I'm asking you do for me, take it down that 5 floor, go down 1 floor. You understand? And make that entry over there right in the middle. Because I don't think that thing is gonna work. I'm telling you, it's not gonna work.
This little woman down here.
You're gonna have a problem top left and right.
Yes.
Yes, I live on Evans Street. I have for 50 years. Evans Street is used as a cut-through from Main Street down to Pleasant Street or all along. Okay, so what I'm seeing, come down to Evans Street, you have parked there to turn right on Waltham Street. Then you can turn left. People coming down Evans Street can go anywhere, and it's a cut-through to Bridge Street, and it's something to Pleasant Street. Now, all this extensive traffic that's going to be used, that's going to be added on from this development is only going to make it worse. We have a tremendous amount of traffic that comes down. We have it's commercial sometimes, it's residential, but that whole area is completely used for any cut-through, anywhere you want to go. I mean, that whole area is the area that people use. This is not going to help in any way at all. Any of the traffic that comes, Pleasant Street now is a very, very congested area during the day, and when people get out of work, anytime you look at it, it's there. You get to the traffic light, people turning right on Bridge Street, people who want to turn left on Bridge Street, who want to continue on Pleasant Street. It's terrible. The whole place is just overused, okay? And we don't need any more traffic, I'm sorry. We don't need any more residences there. We don't need any more traffic. That's my say-so.
Thank you.
What would a traffic circle work? What's your experience with traffic circles, like coming in from Rosendale and Waltham? I mean, that looks like this area could really use something like that.
Well, I can tell you, Mass DOT loves them. And they can be useful, and we've designed some. as well. In the right context, they can be effective.
It looks like a prime spot.
Well, the relationship between the signal and Waltham, Rosedale, they're pretty close.
Right.
And that's the complicating factor in that case.
Because you have to really control one side.
Correct.
Yeah, I
So,
gotcha.
so that would be difficult to do there for that reason. But there are other contexts where that might make sense.
It looks like you're gonna have to get it so it just keeps moving, man, because stopping it and getting everybody to try to cooperate, I mean, I don't wanna snuff your development. I mean, we obviously need the residents in some cases. In this case, this is a really tough spot for you. I mean, it's like all right there, so.
Right.
Time to be more creative, eh?
We're trying.
I know.
Part of what I keep hearing that keeps coming up for me, and it might not be a very popular thing to say, so forgive me, people, but we seem to be like advocating for our right to be like, oh, well, we're just gonna park anywhere we wanna park. If we can find free parking, that's just what we're gonna do. And you can't do that because we have to, like, nobody shovels their sidewalk on Pleasant Street, so you have to accommodate us because we don't shovel our sidewalks. And it feels to me like we're being sloppy citizens. Like, if not shoveling our sidewalks is the problem, then that should be the solution. Like, get off our butts and let's shovel our sidewalks so we as citizens can walk safely on our sidewalks.
We're on Pleasant Street, we shovel our walk
Thank you.
constantly.
Absolutely.
And we don't go without shoveling our walk.
Yeah, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but somebody brought it up as a
We do
concern
keep
that
our
in the
business
winter.
clear.
The
accommodations-
businesses are really good.
And
It's
that's
the
important.
residents who don't take care of their
For
neighbors.
residents, then, I mean, the better everybody does, the better every day. But it is, these people aren't accountable for making provisions because we don't want to like shovel my own residential sidewalk. I'm sorry. I feel accountable to you to shovel my sidewalk so you can come and walk safely because that's what you like to do when you live in my community and you're my neighbor.
There's no single residences on this whole stretch of Pleasant Street.
Okay,
There's
so
none.
then, okay.
Zero.
Then it shouldn't be a concern.
There are no single residents, there are single residents.
I think yeah, I think
No, that stretch.
Well, who cares? It's
So
one
it gets you there in the
street.
summer,
It's very
it's a pretty way to get there. The
It's
sidewalk
really
takes you
one
to San
street.
Pedro.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to
And
walk.
if we're all
I
divided,
work
if
for
we
the
take
state,
care of
they
it,
hardly
you're
ever
D
get to it.
and I'm
It's
C,
not plowed,
and
then it
we
shouldn't
don't
be a
get
problem
any
because we
notices
all
and
take
you
care
don't
of
get,
it.
meanwhile, it's one street, you can only cross over in one area, and the Bridge Street, and the lines there are impossible. I can't get out of my house between 5 and 7 at night. I can't go into town, I can't get out of Watertown. You know, we are not being considered. There are a lot of individual people, and no one gives a damn, especially the builders.
That's what it.
And the town.
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. We can't get out of our own street. We can't get up it, and we can't get down it. And no one seems to address that. We just have pockets. We have one street that the town is making a lot of money on, and the builders are, and the people that aren't are here. And we need to be considered.
Yep.
Thank you.
And again, we fully recognize that you're hearing the mounting frustration, but if you're going to be part of our community, I think you need to hear it. And I mean, again, our town representatives also need to hear it and change things. Maybe 10 years ago, it seemed like an abstract idea. Oh, we'll make Pleasant Street pretty. And oh yeah, traffic, and oh yeah, noise, and oh yeah, trees, and oh yeah, that, don't worry, like it kind of feels like, don't worry your pretty little heads, we'll all take care of it, and it's not getting taken care of. And we're the ones, and your residents and your building, the people are gonna be affected. And the fact that we have business owners who are here sharing their concerns, as well as residents, lived in the town for 20 years, and I'm starting to feel kind of like I belong, and but I know I'm still kind of a newbie to some people. And this is where we've chosen to live. And your comment, it was flip, but it kind of cuts raw. Like, well, maybe people wouldn't want to live here if it's that traffic's that crappy, and you don't have access. But this is our home, where we raise our families.
Upon us.
Yeah.
No, I
Well, and be
understand.
ready if you have people coming in, like, we're new in town. and we're very happy to be here, but we came in fully intending to take public transportation to work, and it is just not a viable option.
Right.
And we would if we could, but we can't. I mean, it's unreasonable, and
You
so.
know, I heard you earlier about the path, and we're kind of in this together. You pointed that out well. What we're trying to do is improve the site, and as part of that, improve the infrastructure in a way that we can for smaller development. You point out make a good point. If the path is not cleared in the winter, how can we work to get that done? And that is through working with the DCR and trying to convince them how critical it is. They're the ones that have worked so hard to make that happen, make it a reality. Somehow, funds have to be found to allow that to happen.
Tell us where and when to be, and we'll talk to them.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
all
I mean,
talk.
And I think all of us can talk together, and you've got a great representative here who's going to go to that meeting. So those are types of issues that we work on together. We're here, we hear the frustration, we know it's much bigger than us, and what we're trying to do is to develop this piece of land and improve it, but also not to have a negative impact on the traffic that exists on the roadways. So those are types of issues that I think we can work together. I know Andrea is here from the town, obviously has an interest in that, and those are things that I think we can
And
try
that
to
kind
work
of,
on.
I mean, that makes such a difference, like, that way your residents can bike more year-round, and people in the neighborhood can enjoy the path, and that makes a good neighbor. So
And
I
that
think
is the
makes a
intent
difference.
of the whole corridor, to make it, and in the community, is trying to make this town much more pedestrian and bike-friendly, to get alternative modes of transportation. When we talk about shuttle services, all of that is part of a major plan for the town that has significant support, that developers want to have happen too, because they're bringing employees and they're bringing residents, and it will work better for them. So there are, although there's frustrations, and I know we're getting punched a little bit here tonight, but I think we're kind of all in this together. And if we can work together, and I'm not just saying that because of where it is, but the frustration that you have with that not being packed, we all have, and something can be done. But this should be an easy solution.
Well,
Yeah, it seems like an easy fix.
It is nice to talk nice, but we need a fact. We don't need just
Because that's what happens, is then you build
that's
it,
why we need a
and
fact.
then what was
Right,
supposed to happen
but
doesn't happen,
there's a
and then
couple
we're
of
left.
things tonight that you pointed out.
Worse
like,
off. It's not
Bridge Street improvements, and people saying, well, it's going to be done, but it's not happening. Well, on Bridge Street, there is some definite plans that are required to be put into place because of the development that's going to improve the traffic there.
No.
But that
Let's go from a
development,
D to a D, how?
I forget your name.
That's an improvement.
Bridge Street will not move the way it is.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, and that's the way it is. You understand?
I would
Because no
I
matter
would
what you
disagree.
say,
I would
you know what I mean?
disagree
I know
because
people.
things can be done.
I know people for New York, I know people for Watertown. It's there. It's a traffic over there. It's getting dead over there. You understand?
Well,
So,
I don't think we can have that attitude. I think we have
No,
to
I'm not
allow
telling you,
change
you
to happen.
speak nice, I really appreciate it. But you gotta make us fat, that's a condom here. You work for these people, you don't work fast. You gotta work first fast, and then for them.
Well,
That's the
I
way
hope
it is.
we're all in this together.
You know, I was in a construction, I know how to deal. You know what I mean?
Great job.
Thank you.
I know that you,
Thank you. So I do want to address one thing you said, Bill. You talked about this project being an improvement. Removing the berm, the forested berm with its 52-plus significant trees of 8 inches large or larger, and all the environmental services that provides to Waltham Street and everything is most emphatically not an improvement for this neighborhood. I mean, there was the woman who just left asked about how much sound mitigation was going to be lost and how it would compare. There is no comparison between having this massive, I don't know how many tons of soil with trees on top versus having hardscape and parking, traffic, and buildings. You're not only going to have completely different environment in terms of sound, but you're going to have all of that filtering of the air that's lost. And the quality of the sound that you get from a natural environment. there's just a huge environmental loss when you flatten that berm and get rid of all that. And there's just no way that you can call that an improvement when you replace it with 3 residential buildings. You just can't.
Can I speak about that section for just a minute?
Yes, and,
So this,
and I know Blair is here to.
Yep, so the berm is in my backyard. So we're at 38 Waltham Street. We are at the thickest part of the berm. It is the most forested, thickest forested area is where our backyard is. It completely overcovers our driveway right now. It provides a ton of shade. I feel like residents that live on Falmouth Street, I don't even think that everyone understands the impact. These trees are so tall that you might be living down Falmouth Street and you are now going to be able to see straight into Pleasant Street when this berm is removed. Call me a tree hugger. It sounds like we don't have much choice of this project happening, so I appreciate that they're trying to be as respectful with us living there and trying to work with us in that space, but I guess what's even more concerning to me is if the berm does have to go, the timeline of the project really has you starting construction in the winter months. And this is not a small section where we're talking 2 or 3 trees. This is a large section where there's a lot of natural wildlife and you're going to be destroying their home, all of that in the middle of winter. And to me that just seems, it seems really sad. It seems sad because it's my backyard. So this is the nature, these are the wild creatures that are like in my backyard right now, and we're just going to destroy that entire environment in the middle of winter. And I don't know, I guess just call me a tree hugger for that. But this, it is going to impact more than just my backyard. It is going to devastate our backyard, but it really will impact people that live
everywhere
across the street on Waltham Street. I mean,
environment
all the way up here by the police station, the sight line is going to be straight to Pleasant Street, whereas right now it is truly covered by these giant trees. So it's very sad to me.
And I agree. Just one other thing, when you start digging into that berm, as Debbie mentioned, there's a lot of animals in that. And I know when they typically do construction in different areas of town, all the rodents, whether they're rats or whatever, they're gonna start dispersing. And, you know, we're gonna end up with residential problems potentially too. So do you do anything as part of the
There is.
protection?
There's a very strict, through the health department in the town, very strict rodent ordinance, as well as dust and noise ordinances. But the rodent ordinance, we're going to have to go through the Board of Health, as every development does, and have certain requirements put into effect to deal with the potentials.
So if it affects neighbors, or neighbors
And
responsible, or is
the
the
Board of
development?
Health will have to sign off on that and put conditions as to what needs to be done and what is required to be done. So there are good protections for that, but yeah, there will be certainly be disturbance.
I have to say that is not a rat haven. There's
No, but
lots
there's
of things.
woodchucks and there's rabbits, right, but, you know,
Right,
I don't know if there's
woodchucks and
rabbits.
rabbits are not the kind of, they're not vermin, you know exactly?
We have plenty of rabbits
What
up
you have is
out here,
wildlife,
so
you
it's-
have wildlife corridors,
Lots of
that's what
rabbits.
that is. That's a way that animals can get from place to place, and it's an important part of our environment.
We're getting messed by rabbits here.
It's just displacing that entire ecosystem at a time of year where it leaves them no options. I mean, they will just go into the street and die, and that to me is just very sad.
What animals have you seen? What animals have you seen?
I mean, there's groundhogs that are in there, there's squirrels, there's
Raccoon.
Lots of birds.
It's a good bird habitat, like a bird. I want it. It's a good bird
Again, I
habitat.
appreciate their willing to work with us, I appreciate that they came out and spoke with us, and I think you're trying to be as respectful as possible. The project moves forward, I appreciate that, but, you know, if I had my choice, I'd keep my beautiful trees and forests in my backyard.
I think we all would keep those trees.
That is true.
Right, so why not value them for what they're really worth to this neighborhood? Why is it okay with you guys to just flatten that when it has such a negative impact on the neighborhood?
I'll be very blunt with you, you know the answer. Those trees cannot survive with the site constraints relating to the size of this development and how it's laid out.
Meaning the only way that you can make money is to destroy that environment and put those 3 buildings there instead.
No.
Is that correct?
And that's.
What do you mean, no? That's what you're
And
gonna
that's,
do.
that's unfair to ask.
Wait a minute, what do you mean?
That's unfair to ask.
Why?
Because it's just not.
It shouldn't have been allowed to begin with, but it's done. I mean, we weren't consulted. I mean, God can't come down and talk to you and negotiate before we all
Not for
know.
your names.
No,
Okay?
we appreciate your concerns.
Oh, thank you.
So are there any other questions? What we'll try to do is to, and Andrew will have this, as the peer review is received and it's ready to be published, that will be put on the town's website by the town. And Brian, I know if you have any questions, if you have any email questions, you can certainly get through to us on that. It's expected that as we proceed ahead, certainly notices will be sent out as to the timing of meetings. We hope to do this in a very respectful way and to work with you, so if there are any particular comments, please reach out to us, and we will try to work with the neighborhood as best we can. We're going to continue to work with the abutters, Joan, Debbie, who are directly impacted along Waltham Street, and as best we can with the folks off of Sweats Court up right where you are sitting.
Is there a way of getting the notice to like all of these people here? We've been doing flyers and it's a lot of work.
Here's the planning board is the second Wednesday of every month. We meet once a month.
Right.
Second Wednesday. So
That's correct.
if he's planning on September or October, whatever number that second Wednesday is, chances are that'll be there.
You can sign up for the planning board notices to you online, and you'll get blasted for the agenda.
Right, just have
Yeah.
yourself set up.
And I'll send out in my normal chain, but then it doesn't reach everyone, but it'll be well publicized.
Right, but if people want to give your email address,
Yeah.
they can, they'll include you in this list.
Or me.
Right, and I think if people have email addresses and you aren't on Ken's list, give in your email addresses and contact information. We're required to send to basically an abutters list. We'll get, the town will get it out. We'll obviously keep your representative advised of what's happening. So we'll try to get it out as best we can.
And the abutters, just so you know, is the project parcel. If you were to look at the actual site boundary, and everyone within 300 feet of that, and every individual abutter within 300 feet of that first ring. That makes sense?
Yep.
So, abutters and abutters to abutters. So if I'm the property, you and the gentleman in the Patriots hat, essentially, I'm the property, you're the abutter, he's the abutter to you. And I've left my cards up here. Anybody who wants can email me and say, what's up?
And I can confidently say Andrew is very good. Not only writes back same day, but usually within the hour. So,
thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Both nights. Thank you.